Did you ever stop to think how the necessities of life and success are constantly evolving? Hello again, everyone. I'm Eli's dad with Project Eli, where we educate, we lead, and we inspire. And talking about the necessities of life, it just came to light, not recently. I've thought about this before, but just on a forefront with the recent tragedies that we've had concerning the weather, Ida, and people down south in Louisiana. And they mentioned that one of the necessities of life was air conditioning. Well, guess what? People used to live in the South before there was air conditioning. And what kind of brought that to my mind was I remember being on a business trip in San Antonio, staying at the Hilton, and my boss, we was sharing a hotel room, said to me, "See how close the Alamo is, and we'll go over and visit if we have some time." So I called the concierge at the front desk, said, "In relation to where we are, how far away is the Alamo?" And the concierge said, "It's directly across the street from our front entrance, sir." Okay, so we were right across the street from the Alamo. So we walked over to the Alamo, and when the first thing you notice, Texas is kind of hot during the summer. The first thing you notice is when you get into the Alamo, how cool it was. And I said to myself, wow, they really have the air conditioning working well in here. And the guy said, the air conditioning's not on. The way the Alamo was built with the limestone and whatever they built, I'm not going to go into the detail, but however they built it, protected it from the extreme heat during the summer and kept it warm during the winter. Okay, it was a very good, very well insulated building, all right, so to speak. And so I said to myself, wow, so that's how they were able to survive without air conditioning way back when. And think about other necessities of life that we have. Running water, as an example. It's absolutely necessary that we have running water. What did people do before we had that kind of a system set up, before science was able to help us when we turn on a faucet? People walked to a river, there were different ways people figured out how to get that job done. Nature speaks to us on an individual basis. Stop and think about it. What is success? Success is determined by how well you harness the consistent results nature provides with individual skills and actions. Successful creations only exist when they are in sync with nature and its laws. Let me give you a couple of examples. Babe Ruth, the Sultan of SWAT, hit home runs big time. He figured out, that if I stand this way, if I put my weight on that foot, if I swing such way, all of these things were figured out. Ted Williams actually call it the science of hitting. But the science of hitting is kind of useless unless the action of the bat hitting the ball causes the ball to go in the opposite direction a pretty fair distance. Once again, the laws of nature working in conjunction with individual skills and understanding how they work. Once again, successful creations only exist when they are in sync with nature and its laws. Did you ever stop and think about achieving? What is the science there? Well, it all starts with the dream. We were given the gift by our Creator to imagine. We had imaginations. We had the ability to dream. Then we were given also the ability to control our thoughts. That's one of the reasons why it's important to have a positive mental attitude, because you control your thoughts. Intuition. Intuition is a gift. Or is it? Or is it something scientific? I submit to you, as I have many times from this very pulpit, that intuition is actually a science. What is intuition? Intuition is having a single burning desire, a thought, a vibe that you send into the universe, that you single out among the 60,000 or so thoughts that you have every single day, and you open the corridor of communication between you and the universal mind, and the universal mind partners with you based upon that single thought to help you to achieve it. It doesn't matter whether it's for good or whether it's for evil. The science always works. If you have that thought, you single it out, you communicate with the infinite partner, and if you do that often enough, it's not going to happen every time, but if you do that often enough, the communication corridor will open up. You'll start to get some thoughts that come from who knows where, the infinite mind, that you can use, and people call those intuition. And then completing that success circle is taking action. Action generates motion and momentum that thought alone cannot generate. It isolates actual results and recreates the circle of success of dream, thought, intuition, and more action. It is the success spiral followed by 5%ers, either consciously or unconsciously, since the start of recorded history. You know, successful creations only exist when they are in sync. So let's think about a couple of things here. All right, I want to give you a couple of examples. You know, at the end of the summer, when the winter starts to come, if you live in a cold weather climate, one of the things that you have to do is you have to put away your garden hose. You have to drain your garden hose. Now, why do you have to do that? Because if you don't drain your garden hose, what happens, because of the laws of nature, when the weather gets really, really cold, and I do believe it's about 4 degrees Fahrenheit, that water starts to expand when it turns into ice, and then it starts to expand. What happens to your hose? Then your hose breaks. And you've experienced this yourself if you've ever put a can of soda into the freezer, forgotten all about it. You open up the freezer, 2 days later, and you see that it's exploded all over the freezer. Why? Because water expands when it gets to a certain cold temperature. Once again, it's understanding how the laws of nature work. And when you want to drain your hose, what do? You make sure that you put one end of the hose at a lower level, because the law of gravity will force the water out of the hose, and then you can put away a dry hose, store it for the winter, and not worry that it's going to explode. Does that make sense? So on an individual basis, one of the things that we want to master is that little formula, which is dream, thought, and intuition, and taking action. These are the things that on an individual basis are combining the nature and the individual skill. But if you don't have the wherewithal to figure out how to think, if you can't listen to the people that say, I was successful, this is the formula that I used, and when you see that formula, you're going to see that it's always the same. It's always the same. So embrace that formula on an individual basis. These are the lessons that are so critical to an individual advancing. Next time we get together, we're going to focus on how we can advance on a global level, because we're right now at that precipice in the history of our planet. It's essential. And once again, as I've preached from this pulpit before, many of the same foundations that make an individual successful also make a group successful. And until that time, remember always, don't ration the passion, fashion the passion. I'm Eli's dad.